What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So this weekend we got a featherweight matchup, Korean Zombie versus Max Holloway. Max Holloway's an 8-1 favorite here. He opened up as a 10-1 favorite.
Jeez.
I think most people, ourselves included, are thinking that Max Blessed is going to get in there and get the job done. Zombie's a little bit past his prime. There's talks that this is going to be his last fight, but do you see this fight being competitive at all, and do you think there's any way that the Zombie could make things interesting?
Well, I'm not gonna bury the lead, and I do think that Max Holloway is gonna get his hand raised, and he's gonna look as sharp as he's ever looked. Max Holloway is still the best 145er on the planet that's not named Alexander Volkanovski, but everybody likes to go with that recency biased aspect of MMA and, you know, what have you done for me lately, or what did you do in your last performance? And a lot of people look at the Korean Zombie's performance against Volkanovski and they hold that against him. They're like, oh, he's completely washed now. He can't fight. He can't hang with anybody. And while I definitely see Max Holloway having his way with the Korean Zombie and winning this fight emphatically, likely by finish, the Korean Zombie is a very durable guy. He's very tough, and he does know how to present some issues for fighters, regardless of their level, regardless of how many times they've, defended their belt or become the greatest fighter in the world at their weight class. Max Holloway is a great fighter. He's obviously one of the featherweight GOATs, and Korean Zombie deserves a lot of credit for taking this fight, which is likely going to be a retirement fight. I mean, everybody knows that unless you're Khabib or a couple of these guys, George St. Pierre, you finish your career face down and embarrassed. And if the UFC wants to end your career face down and embarrassed, they basically say, okay, you're retiring, we'll give you Max Holloway.
Yeah, Max is definitely a tough night out, stylistically, for the Korean Zombie. Korean Zombie's super durable, but so is Max.
Right.
Korean Zombie's a grizzled veteran, but guess what? So is Max.
Yep.
And Max still seems to be right in the heat of his prime, and the Korean Zombie has seen better days. There's no exact age where you say, okay, this person's a little old to be doing this. And it happens in different times for different people.
Right.
Like if you look at Glover Teixeira, for example, winning the belt at 42, he looked great. He didn't look like an old guy in the ring. But then when you see Nick Diaz come back and try to fight, I think at 37 or 38, he looked a little geezery. He looked a little bit old. The way he moved was that of like an old person. So not to say that the Korean Zombie looks like an old guy in the cage, but he looks like he's lost a step a little bit when he fought Volkanovski. Now, that could be just because Volkanovski makes everybody look like they've lost a step when they get in there and fight him. But to me, it seemed a little bit more than that. He didn't seem to have that pop he had. He didn't seem to have that ability to read shots that were coming and deliver great counter strikes. He seemed sort of a half a step or a full step behind Volkanovski.
Right.
And Max Holloway, if there's a 1A and 1B at the featherweight division, it's 1A is Volkanovski, 1B is Max Holloway, and it's a very close second. So I think that what we saw against Volkanovski is likely what we're to see against Max Holloway. But either way, when you get two legends of the sport like the Zombie and Blessed in the Octagon together, it's going to make for a fun night.
Yeah, and it's weird that this is happening at 7 a.m. for us folks in America that are going to try to watch this fight. And, I have a busy morning on Saturday morning, so it's usually not something that I'll be able to catch, but I will certainly tune into these fights. Anytime Blessed Holloway's in there, I have to see it. And the Korean Zombie, you can say the same thing for him. He's super entertaining, very fun. And even though he doesn't get his hand raised all the time, he's always going to give you a fight worthy of a bonus. But to touch on their ages again, Max Blessed Holloway is one of those dudes that when every time the tail of the tape shows up and it shows his age, you're just blown away. You're like, what is this guy? He's got to be 38 by now, right? He's been in the game for so long. He was the champ for years, so many years ago, right? He's lived through the Volkanovski era and he's still sitting at the top. But like when you see his age and he's like 32 or 33 years old, you're like, how is he still doing this at this high of a level? You just forget that he got into it and got to such a high level at such a young age. Max Holloway is one of those prodigies of the sport. And he came in and he was on fire, guns ablazing. I'd still love to see him go in there and mix it up with Conor McGregor later in his career. He's done enough for the sport to where he could get those big fights. And I think a lot of people, give Max Holloway the respect he deserves. So I think the people of Singapore are going to have a great fight on their hands. I don't think that the guy that, grew up closer to that portion of the world is going to get his hand raised, but I think that the people in Singapore are going to love Max Holloway. They're going to get behind it. And whether you're a fan of his or whether you're a fan of Korean Zombies, you're not a hater of either one of those guys. And I do believe that the people of Singapore are just down for a great fight.
Yeah, well, if you look at the Asian MMA and combat sports fans as a whole, they respect and hold in such high regard the legends of the sport. Like if you look at Rickson Gracie all the way back in the day, Rickson is Brazilian, and he used to come over there and put the work on fighters that were Japanese fighters and great judokas and people like that. But even still, the fans had a revere and respect for Rickson. So it'll be no different for Max. Right. Even though the Korean Zombie is probably who a lot of the fans are going to be rooting for, they're not going to be any boos in the crowd when Max Holloway walks out. He's somebody who's going to be very well respected in that part of the world. And I think that he's going to come in, and this is going to be Max's last fight at 145, I believe. He's talked a lot about moving up to 155. There's a lot of fun fights for him. I think he's going to get a finish here. I'm going to predict a third-round TKO just because the Zombie is so tough and so durable. It'll take a couple of rounds and some accumulation for Max to get the job done. But then I see Max moving right into fun fights at 155. If there ever was a candidate for the BMF title, it's Max Holloway.
For sure.
If Justin Gaethje Conor shakes out, or if Justin Gaethje holds on to that BMF belt, Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje for the BMF mega fight. Max Holloway getting a shot at redemption against Conor McGregor at lightweight, also mega fight. You want to throw Max in there with Michael Chandler. Awesome. There's so much fun that can be had at 155 for Max, and he has nothing left to prove at 145. He can't beat Volkanovski, and he's beaten everybody else that's not Volkanovski, so he's kind of in no man's land, and I think this is a good last fight because it's one that's against a big name. It's one that he'll likely win. It's one that he'll likely get a finish in, and it springboards what's to happen at 155 next.
Yeah, and I think it's a great idea for Max Holloway to just commit to the move to 155. If you want to fight at 145, you have to keep your body in a certain shape. And while I don't see Max Holloway going and trying to pack on the pounds and try to, get all swole and stuff, I do think that he'll be able to, consume more calories and push himself a little bit harder in the gym and sort of become a bigger, stronger version of himself so he can fill that 155 frame out even better and have a better chance at beating the guys at the top of 155. Because make no mistake about it, if they move him into the 155 division, he's not going to fight people outside of the top 10. He's going to be right there in the mix with everybody, not only because of his skills, but because of his star power and his name. He's one of those guys. And like you said, Conor McGregor has already sort of laid out his next few fights, right? He wants to fight Chandler, he wants to fight Gaethje for the BMF, and he wants to fight Nate Diaz. But if you could add the cherry on top and get him in there with Max Holloway once again, I think Conor McGregor, Max Holloway, and the fans would love to see something like that happen. So Max Holloway, obviously isn't looking past the Korean Zombie, but I think he understands exactly what he needs to do to, springboard into the next phase of his career, which could likely be at 155. He's got to go out there and beat one of the most durable 145ers we've ever seen in the Korean Zombie. And I can't wait to see it happen. I wish it was happening at 7 p.m. instead of 7 a.m. our time, but I'll still tune in regardless.
We'll make do.
Yep.